Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dinkoy, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert. Welcome to another edition of Tuesday Tea Time with Chala. Again, because I've just been to a conference, I've been eating conference food and came back a little bit heavier than I'd like. So I'm having protein instead of tea, and it is really hot. So let me take a sip. So my first trip out of Canada to the US was like a dream story. It was like all the visualizations worked, everything that I was hoping for happened. It's just I visualized myself just walking through like the old days where I used to just walk through customs, because I have a Nexus, and I made sure that I checked luggage instead of sorry, I didn't check luggage. I just took carry on with me. So I was walked through in 10 minutes and then walked out in 10 minutes. So I visualized everything. It's exactly what I wanted. My sponsors, amazing. Capital One, Allison Cuby, she was a dream to work with. We owned the stage. We filled the space. It was a dream come true. I visualized people like standing room only. I visualized getting on TV, the local TV, and I hadn't heard from them by the time that I left here. So I didn't take any of my, books that I was promoting. I didn't take any of my props. I usually get a local, like a rescue dog from a shelter locally. I didn't have time to do that, but I was still able to get on the CBS 46 Peachtree TV. It's hard to say that. I don't even know how they say that. And yeah, so then one of the highlights for me was after we did our speech, right after we did the elevator pitches that wow buyers, or what buyers think about bad pitches and wrong pitches. We did an RFP training. Allison and I did an RFP training right across from where we were. And today, what you're going to hear is the notes from that training. So I did a whole bunch of research and got ready to do a training on RFPs and to answer any questions from business owners on requests for proposals. Now, if you've never heard of the term RFPs, it's fine. You can turn this off. It's probably not for you unless you want to get ready to do them. They're really usually for larger contracts and to bid on business against other contenders, so other vendors. Sometimes they're done as a course for their purchasing mandates, that they need to have at least 3 quotes for one outgoing job. And often this happens in the government as well, that they have to give it out as an RFP before they can award it to someone. So let me talk to you about some of the research that's happening around RFPs and how to win RFPs. It's everything that I teach around your marketing message and marketing meetings and actual pitches. So it's very in line with everything that I've been telling you guys and teaching my clients what to do, but it's just a little bit more specific because it's in a very formatted, questioned format. So it's very prescriptive, but yet you can still weave a story around what you're doing. So one of the first things is we had a whole bunch of what they called meet and greets with corporate buyers, and I met with some large corporations. I met with Walmart. I met with I'm going to say was it the retailers, Macy's, Lowe's, Home Depot. So I pretty much asked a lot of buyers that I met about what are some of the biggest, Wells Fargo, EY, Ernst & Young. So I pretty much anybody that I could talk to, I asked them, what is the number one RFP pet peeve? And without exception, regardless of size, regardless of industry, everybody said incomplete RFPs. So when you do not answer questions in the RFPs. So what they ask is, instead, if it doesn't apply to you or you don't know the answer, you have to tell them why you're leaving it empty, and you have to, write something instead of just leaving it blank. And Allison, who is the champion for diverse businesses and who's trying to, and just like any diversity officers, she's trying to get diverse businesses to do business with her purchasers. And she personally took it upon herself to actually contact the vendors who were redlined, meaning who had stuff that, weren't right for the bid, and she personally contacted them and got them to fix it. But you will not be getting that kind of support anywhere else usually. So just be warned that if you don't answer, you're already going to be disqualified and discarded right off the bat. Another big advice that research suggests for RFPs, let me just take another sip, but it's like super hot. Okay, is don't apply to every single RFP. One of the biggest mistakes they think our companies make is to just throw themselves at every single RFP and just dry write them. Just write them. No rhyme or reason. Doesn't have to be an exact fit. They've never met them. It doesn't matter. They just, tell their reps to just, crank it out. And instead, when companies applied a go, no go, meaning they looked at it strategically, they looked at the opportunities strategically, they looked at, is it going to be profitable? Do we have enough of a niche in this business to be competitive? Do we have a competitive advantage and a unique offering? Do we have some stories to tell around this? Is this going to be worth our time? Is this the right fit? If you are able to do this fit, no fit, go, no go analysis before you throw yourself at just writing as many bids as you can, it's going to come back in a higher ROI. And there was a really good ratio. I'm going to tell you. Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit later about why, but there's a ratio of why writing less RFPs is more profitable. There's a whole ratio about a case study. So the second point about, winning RFPs is they found that the top reason for losing RFPs in 2021 was competitors, whereas in 2020 was price. So that tells you something really important, is that buyers are much less price sensitive in 2021, but they care more about the qualifications and the value. And another interesting fact is that 35% of the people surveyed said that there were fewer RFPs in 2020 because of COVID. And now what's coming back is that there's more proposal teams on board in either, external or internal. But then there's also more scrutiny because the buying teams are bigger. So the buying teams, as a result of COVID, or, whether as a result or not, but the buying teams are larger, and the buying, that's why it's because they're larger that the sequence is longer. So it's taking longer, and therefore the scrutiny is higher. So on both sides, it's more people looking at and working on the whole bidding process. So the tip is, of course, to do a win and loss analysis when you've lost them. Again, it's very similar to the go, no go. Where did you lose? Why did you lose? And how can you fix it in the next round? Or how can you avoid applying for the ones that didn't fit, for the ones which because you didn't win them? Here's tip number 3 is increase your hours of writing one RFP. So the average RFP writing time was 24 hours, but the bids that were written for 26 hours, so 2 hours longer on average, won. So that's why the longer time you spend on an RFP and the less RFPs that you do because you choose them strategically, the more ROI you're going to get. Here is this is the biggest point of all of the points that I'm going to make, is that you need to have access to the key decision makers to understand what pain points drove this initiative, what drove this RFP. If you don't understand the drivers to the RFP and why they're in pain and what you need to do to position yourself as a solution. You can't do that from writing what they call dry RFPs. You need to ask for, you either have to get access before the RFP planning session or writing session, or it needs to be baked into the actual process that they give you an actual person to talk to during the RFP process. So here is a company that was the case study. A company spent $1.1 million writing RFPs, and they got only $175,000 revenue back. When they changed their tactics to get access to key decision makers at the companies that were issuing the RFPs, their success rate on RFPs went from 1.6 to 38%. So blindly responding was 1.6% success, and having meetings with key decision makers were 38%. You do the math. So then what about if you're asked for access and you're denied access? Almost in all of the cases, and I recommend this to my clients, to walk away. Because again, statistics show that blindly writing is not going to get you in. Whether they like you, know you, and trust you is what's happening in the access to the decision makers. That's one aspect of meeting them. But it's really about getting their insights about the problem, why it's a problem, why their existing solutions aren't working. These are critical things you need to ask them, and you need to have that information to build that in to the story that you're weaving. Another point about winning RFPs is, especially with the governments, and the way that the government RFPs are structured is the micro, the informal, and the formal. And the micros are $2,500 and under. The informal, which is the mid-level, is the 100K and under, and then the formal is 100K plus. So first figure out where you fit in, because for some of these levels you may not even have to do an RFP. But the earlier you get in, whether with the government or not, the earlier you get in to see the decision makers in the buying cycle, the better your chances of actually closing that business. So here's an example of another case study of a school yearbook printing company. They print school yearbooks. And when they were doing 200 to 300 RFPs per year. And then when they went to actually try to reach out to the people, to the people who had issued the school boards, the school districts, they were turned down because it's illegal for them to talk to them. So what they did is instead, after 6 months of the incumbent getting the contract, whoever it wasn't them, they would contact the school district and ask for a meeting and ask about whether it was going well with their current supplier or not. And if the school district said, yes, it's going well, then they would leave them alone. If the school district wasn't happy with the supplier that they'd gotten through the bid process, then the printing company stayed for an hour longer and did a whole needs discovery where they built in everything they found out about why the current incumbent wasn't doing well and what were some of the things that were going wrong. They built it into their proposal in the next year, and their increase, they increased. What did they say? Let me see if they actually have a. So they asked for the meetings, but I can't remember what it went to. So it went from like 200 to 300 to I think like 60. So they stopped writing every opportunity. What they did is they wrote only to those that expressed problems with their current suppliers. So I love that. Okay, so the next tip that I have is have self-amnesia. There's an actual research that shows that if you use we versus you, and the number of times that you use we versus you in the body of the content of the RFP actually dictates your winning score, your winning rate. So those that were the winning bids had an 20 we and 80 you ratio. So the actual words of we and you can dictate the entire story, because like what I'm teaching, have self amnesia, always talk about them. Even in the executive summary, you start talking about what they said their problem was, what their, the key stakeholder interviews told you were the problems, and how you are uniquely positioned to help them solve that. And the last tip is really, how do you know whether and when you should contact a company before the bid comes out as you look for trigger events? So I'm a huge proponent of being a specialist in one industry and one problem that they have. And when you become a specialist, it means that you can actually target them for and look on the radar for M&As, new legislation, trends like the Great Resignation. I mean, these are things that you need to keep in mind so that you have the trigger, you know exactly when to hit, and you actually approach them and say, we have gone through this with other companies in your industry and we know how to help. So those are some of the ways to win RFPs. RFPs are huge, giant, potential money makers. But it doesn't mean just because you can that you should write for, 200, 300 RFPs a year. Be more selective, you know, and if you don't have the expertise, hire it out. But first and foremost, have a strategy for who your target and what is your specialty and what is your super niche. So I hope that was helpful, you guys. I am happily back in Canada. I'm planning a lot more trips. Hopefully, the travel situation is going to be resolved. I mean, as soon as I came back, actually, the immigration officer told me in Canada they just abandoned the testing. So they used to do random testing, so that used to take some time. So, and for the ones that are testing, if you're unvaccinated, apparently they're doing it offsite. So things are starting to come back. I mean, I've never hugged so many women in my life. There were 3,500 women at the conference, although I wish I'd hugged all of them. I didn't, but it was wonderful to see everyone. So looking forward to the next one. And until then, I will see you guys on Tuesday Tea Time with Chala. Have a good one.